Okay, so we started. Okay, so everybody, thank you for being here. This is the Orlando Tableau, Florida talk. Thank you for being here. And here on the screen, you can see, like I said before, some of our LinkedIn information, email, talk events, Twitter, Slack. However, you can connect with us at any time. We're here to help you. We've been doing this for almost 10 years now. So please connect with us. Let us know anything that you need related to Tableau. And thank you for being here. Um, in addition to that, so like I said, we're the Florida Dog, and this is in the May event. Super excited to go through this today. And here, our leadership team, we have Aaron Simmons here on the screen. My name is Jamil Medina. We have Erica Clemens, Jeffrey Baker, Cathy, and Andrew Kim. So most of us, almost all of us, are here in Orlando, and we work in different companies from Universal Studios, Disney World, Wells Fargo, consultants, and even Erica Splemons works with real estate data. So we're here to help you. Anything that you need, please contact us. That's what we're here for. So our promise, we will help you connect on Twitter and Tableau Public, networking events. We meet every single month, and we bring you great speakers from the Tableau community. Like today, we have super lucky that we have Ethan here with us. And if you have any needs for jobs, let us know. I mean, we will try to help you network with other people here in Orlando to help you connect if you happen to, looking for a job right now, or if you have a job that you're looking for some great talent. Our members of the Florida Talk are great talent that you can approach and find amazing people to for job opportunities. So just let us know if anything of that it's something that you need. Like I say, here's a little bit of our information again. Um, don't hesitate to contact us at any time. And at the end of this event, we usually provide some swag giveaways. So some great things that you can get from Tableau. That we do that, but for that you're gonna have to be all the way to the end of the meeting. Usually it's 1 hour. And what do we have upcoming events? Upcoming speakers. So in June, we have Eric Howard. All of our speakers, as you can see, they are like Tableau ambassadors. Great content, great information. I mean, this Tableau ambassadors, they do a lot for the community, like Ethan does every almost every week, posting new things, tips, tricks, and things that you will always have the opportunity to use. In August, we have Tor. In September, everybody's looking for this one for Team. Tableau Team, you've probably seen his videos on YouTube. He's probably the one person, number one, that posts most videos online. So Tableau Team will be with us in September. Kevin Wee, amazing, amazing Tableau ambassador. I was very lucky to, watch his in live his presentation on the Tableau conference just recently, and he's gonna do the same presentation for us here at the talk. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, don't miss that one. It will be really, really good. Where he's gonna show you how to his use Figma and Tableau, and a lot of super great tips related to images. In November, we're gonna have Lee Fenberg from Decision Biz, and in December, all the top leaders here from Orlando will have some quick presentations for you. So great upcoming events. So what do we have today? We have Ethan. I mean, we know Ethan for a long, long time. Super excited that he's with us today. We also super fans of Playfair Data, where he works, where you probably hear about Ryan Sleeper, great friend of the Florida Orlando Tableau user group, and he's a Tableau ambassador, Tableau Speaker Bureau. You don't always have great, great stuff. I mean, all this stuff that you probably don't use, he uses, right? Like those the things that you see in Tableau, you're not using. Like, how can I use this? I mean, that's the things that Ethan does great, and he's gonna take us through a great tour today to show us all this advanced analytics and the advanced some of the advanced features of Tableau that maybe a lot of people don't use. So he's gonna take us through that tour and show us great, great stuff. So Ethan, thank you for being here again. He's been here before, And super. Oh, also, he's the colleague of the Veterans Advocacy Talk. Please go to that talk. I mean, participate. He does great stuff with veterans, and I'm one of those person. I always tell Ethan, like I have my family have many veterans, and super proud that we have him, and he can do that for veterans. So, and they actually create great content. So go to his talk and make sure that you participate on his talk too. So Ethan, take it away. Thank you for being here. Thank you again for Playfair to allow us, to have you here. Thank you so much. Let me stop my record, I'm sorry, my stop sharing so you can share your screen. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction. Man, that's crazy. I love coming to speak to the Florida Tableau user group. I'm from Florida originally, so when I come and present to you guys, like it's like coming home in a way. So very grateful to be here. And thank you for everyone in the audience for coming. I know your time is extremely valuable as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come here and see the presentation, see what we have to deliver, and hopefully you can take something out of it and incorporate it into your own work. So like Emil said, with that great introduction, I am Ethan Lang. I'm the Director of Analytics Engineering at Playfair Data. I'm the co-lead of the Veterans Advocacy Tableau user group. We try to bring awareness to different issues that veterans face through data visualization. So that's kind of our core concept. But we also host events every month and stuff like that. So we would love for you guys to come and join our group and see what it's all about. We have some great events upcoming. I'm also a member of the Tableau Speaker Bureau and a Tableau User Group Ambassador. So very grateful to hold both of those through the community nominations. So thank you guys for participating and stuff like that. But to kick us off, you didn't come here to hear me talk about myself. Let's jump into the content. I've put together this presentation specifically around introducing statistics into data visualization. So over my course or my time in the industry, what I've adherently noticed is we have great data visualizations where the business can take that information and take action on it. We have great statistical analysis going on sometimes where we have very powerful insights that can deliver change and can deliver a very powerful impact to a business. But we have this disconnect, right? We have data that's being delivered in a visual way. We have statistical analysis that might not be brought to the stakeholders in a visual way. So what I've tried to do is create a presentation and content on how you can bring those two things together to really deliver some powerful insights to your users. And to do that, I've actually started writing a book, and I'm going to do a selfless plug here for that. It's called Statistical Tableau, and the content that I'm about to go over today is chapter 1 of this book. So it's just a brief overview of the analytics pane and the tools that are natively in Tableau that you can incorporate within your data visualizations and start making those more advanced impacts and bringing those insights to the business. So definitely check out the book. It is in progress. It's in early release phase right now, which means there's several chapters that are published, but it's in a raw and unedited format. So if you're an O'Reilly subscriber, you can kind of check out the book as it's being developed, but looking to have that released and published sometime at the end of this year. So let's dive into the content. So like I mentioned, this is kind of a brief overview or definitive guide for the analytics pane in Tableau. And if you're unfamiliar with the analytics pane in Tableau, typically when we open up Tableau, this is the screen that we'll land on. And by default, Tableau gives us or lands us at the data pane. So we're all familiar with this. This is kind of the bread and butter of the authoring interface. It has all of our measures and dimensions, our parameters. It has what data sources we're connected to at the top. But right next to it is the analytics pane. And you can simply toggle to that by clicking on the analytics. And now we're in the analytics pane. And this kind of gives us access to some actual really powerful modeling that's going on underneath the hood here within Tableau that I'll cover in more detail as we move through it. But just to kind of summarize, we have 3 sections here in the analytics pane. We have the summarize section. This is going to be where you can drag in some visual cues, reference lines, average lines, just some things that can really start driving context around your data. You can start making some very basic assumptions around the data using this kind of summarize section. Then we get into modeling, and we have several very powerful models that we can bring in directly within Tableau by simply dragging and dropping it into our view. And I'll cover what those are in more detail. And then the last, and probably my favorite, is this custom section. This allows us to bring in kind of custom reference lines, custom banding, distribution bands, and box plots that we can customize and kind of bring in models that are not necessarily native within Tableau, but can drive some very powerful impact and insight to the business. So let's jump in, and I'm going to actually go through each of these one by one. So starting off with the summarize section, we'll just start with a constant line. And a constant line is, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. You type in a constant value, and it's going to draw a reference line across your view for that value. So to kind of show you how it is in action here, we can drag in constant line from the analytics pane. And if we bring that into the canvas of our view, you can see that we can derive that constant line across the entire table, and it will draw a reference line on the X and Y axes, or we can do an individual axis here. And you can kind of see, it kind of gives us some visual cues. Month of order date, that's what's in our column shelf here. Sum of sales, that's what's in our rows. So for the sake of this demonstration, let me just drop that on sum of sales. And you can see it kind of gives us this new menu, this new box up here. And this is where we can type in a constant value. I mean, it's pretty, like I said, self-explanatory. Let's say I wanted to type in a value of 65,000 and add that into our view. You can see as I type that, it automatically draws that reference line there. And what's great about these is it's a great way to start incorporating benchmarks, or if you're trying to do any kind of conditional formatting. Let's say we wanted to highlight the values in between these two constant lines. Now we kind of have visual cues in our, on our data visualization that kind of draw that line across. So the user's not making any kind of interpretation themselves. You can see we have several marks that are very close to that kind of line. This one right here specifically. So if we were to just drop these and kind of do that conditional formatting, maybe the end users would have, some question on, well, this looks really close. Like, why isn't it highlighted? So this is just a great way to bring in kind of those visual cues directly within our data visualization. The next tool we have to our that we can start incorporating is an average line. And just like it sounds, it's just going to draw and calculate an average across either the table, the entire table, individual panes, or an average line on each cell within our data set. You can see here I've already dragged that into the view. So it's just drawing that reference line, and it's going to calculate out the average across the whole view. Great thing that you can utilize with this is simply just trying to calculate out that rolling average. As we start getting into some of these more advanced calculations in the modeling, when we incorporate confidence intervals, this average line is going to kind of be pivotal to visualizing those things within the view. So we'll get more into this in a moment. The next one I'll cover is median with quartiles. And this is a great data visualization that you can incorporate, or analysis that you can incorporate within your view. Simply just drag in median with quartiles. And what it's going to do is calculate out the median, and it's going to show you the upper and lower bounds of your quartile, essentially. And within this kind of inner quartile range, this is actually going to calculate out about 50% of your data should fall within kind of this banding. And you can see that does kind of make sense as we kind of look across. About 50% of the marks in our view kind of fall within that range. So this is a great analysis that you can do as an analyst to kind of see, what's the volatility, what's the range, the breadth of your data. Are you kind of tight? Is it kind of a tight banding, or is it very loose and wide? So you can kind of make those assumptions and start doing some discovery utilizing this very simple tool here. The next one we've all seen and we love is our box plots. These are great. I love box plots, especially when I'm coming into a new data set and trying to understand the distribution, or, if there's anything that I need to take care of, especially once we start getting into the modeling. We really need to understand if there's outliers within our data to calculate out these models and know they're, correct in the assumptions that we're making. So box plots are a very powerful analytics tool, especially for us as analysts. However, I wouldn't necessarily put this in front of my stakeholders. If I were, I would definitely clean this up. And I'll show you a little bit more about how we can clean up this box plot view and make it more visually appealing and deliver kind of the same analysis, just in a new way, further on into this presentation. But just to sum it up, these box plots here, we have our upper and lower whiskers. We have our, upper and lower hinge to here. That interquartile range, again, is calculating out about 50% of our data would fall here within that range. And then anything outside of our whiskers here, we could potentially call an outlier. So you can see here, of all the marks in the view right now, we just have this one that kind of falls outside of that range. And if we wanted to dive in and kind of understand why, we can simply right-click it, hit View Data, and kind of go into that particular mark and really try to understand what's causing that outlier. Maybe it's, the data entry was incorrect, or our ETL process, something was messed up there that we need to investigate. But all of those questions can arise just from a very simple analysis like this, utilizing the analytics pane and the box plot view. Another really helpful hint or tip for box plots that I love to incorporate is jittering the box plot. And you can do that. There's a hidden function within Tableau called random. If you simply double click within your column shelf in this particular example, you can double click within one of the shelves, type in random with some open and close parentheses at the end. And if you hit enter, it's going to jitter the marks in your view randomly across your x-axis there. So if I increase the size of my marks, you can now see that they're kind of jittered across the view. Surely we've all seen this kind of in Tableau Public, but that's how they're achieving that kind of UX. And this really opens it up for the user to kind of scroll through. Definitely helpful as you for an analyst to kind of go through, and now you can hover over each one of these marks individually and kind of see what's going on underneath the hood. Whereas before, maybe they were kind of landing right on top of each other on that one solid line. So this is just, again, another way that you can kind of enhance the view, if you will. The next one is, I will just totally gloss over. I don't even like to cover it, honestly, because we shouldn't be visualizing our data in kind of these crosstab views. But the next one is totals. And what we have here is we can add totals and subtotals directly to our view from the analytics pane. Obviously, there's different ways that you can incorporate that. I think most common is folks go to the analysis tab, maybe go to totals, and then check mark one of these boxes here that will add those totals or subtotals to the view. Doing it from the analytics pane, for me, it just saves time. That's the only difference between the two, I would say. So you can just drop it right in and then it calculates it out as is. You can also pivot your data. So if you wanted to add, row grand totals or column grand totals, you'll notice when you drag that into the view, they'll be grayed out. So depending on how your data is pivoted within your view, that's how those totals will be added. Again, I'll just briefly glance over that because it's kind of irrelevant. Now we're going to get into the modeling. Again, this is my second favorite section. It kind of progresses as we go. Custom is my absolute favorite. But once we start getting into the modeling section of the analytics pane, this is really when we can start doing some really cool stuff and incorporating some very powerful models directly within our view by simply just dragging these things into the view. So the first one I'll cover is an average with 95% confidence interval around it. And what this means is it's going to draw the average line, like I mentioned earlier, and it's going to put a banding around that shows us kind of a 95% confidence interval on the average. And what that is telling us is if we were to resample this data, we kept getting more data, that average, if all else stays the same, is going to fall within this banding 95% of the time. If things change drastically within our data collection or just the population that we're sampling, that average is going to drop outside. And then 5% of the time, even if all else is the same, we might get an average that falls outside of it. So it's really a powerful statistic that we can incorporate within our view, and it's doing some very powerful modeling in the background. But Tableau, it's so simple. We just drag it on and it calculates all that for us. If we were to do this by hand, especially with this many marks, it could take us, all day to really calculate that out. So again, this is a really powerful model that you can incorporate and kind of explain to your stakeholders that that's going to show you the average and where it would fall if we kept getting more data. The next one I'll cover is the median with 95% confidence interval. And again, this is very powerful, but it's showing the exact same thing as the average with 95% confidence interval, except it's calculating off the median now. So you can see it's drew a median line here across our entire view, and it's got that banding. Now, one thing that I like to do, especially if I'm coming into new data, is I'll drop both of those on the same view. And what this analysis is going to tell me is if there are any outliers within our data, this analysis right here is a great visual way to find those and to understand kind of the distribution of your data. Typically, if our average and median are pretty close to one another, we don't have a whole lot of volatility within our data set. But as we start getting, say, outliers within our data, these are going to be kind of vastly set apart. So by doing this analysis, what I can see is, the average and the median, their confidence intervals are intersecting. We can see that kind of with this darker banding here in the middle. And what that tells me is, the median and average, yes, they're away from each other slightly, but there's not much concern there. I mean, the confidence intervals are still touching, which is a great sign of, what's going on. And even if we just think of, get outside of that statistical analysis mindset and into more of the visual, we can start making some brief assumptions on that too. I mean, we have this kind of, as new data has come in, we're starting to see higher sales. So that's going to inherently drag the average up where it might not affect the median as much. So maybe that's why we're seeing it kind of pull away from the median a little bit. So again, just a lot of assumptions that you can make from a very simple analysis like that as you're beginning to understand your data and kind of, get into some of these modelings. It's very helpful to take a pass on some of these very easy analysis first. Now we're getting into the fun part, trend lines. When Tableau came out with this, it's so funny because they use the term trend line, which I think just undersells what actually is happening underneath the hood. These are actually very powerful models that you can simply drag in and drop into your data. It's actually running different regressions on your model, or excuse me, on your data. And to kind of show you a demonstration of this, I'm going to drag in trend line and drop it on linear. And you can see it's going to draw kind of this linear line that's moving from, our bottom left towards the top right or top middle there. And just visually, this makes sense, right? We have our data here. We can see that as we move from the left side of our data and we move it forward into the future, our data is slightly going up over time. So the trend line is matching that. Now, again, this is just a very brief visual here, but if you hover over this, you can start to see where the power of this actual model is happening. So if you hover over the trend line, you'll see and you'll be presented with some of these statistics here. The first one, it says sales equals, and it has this equation. That's the regression equation that's calculating out this line. If we go back to the old math days, you think of that slope line. That's exactly what this is, basically, is a slope line. It has your intersect value of where it's intersecting on the y-axis, and then it's either moving up or down based on where that intersection is happening at and the data that's within your view. We have two other statistics. One is an R-squared and the other is a p-value. If you have any brief introduction into statistics, you probably are familiar with a p-value and what that entails. That's just going to tell us if this model is statistically significant or not. Typically, we'll hear, a p-value of 0.05 is what is considered statistically significant if it's below that. But it really depends on you and your particular analysis. If I'm working with sales data here, sure, that benchmark is fine. But if I'm working with maybe healthcare data, maybe I need to bump that up to have a higher accuracy, especially if we're talking clinical trials or the difference between life or death in a lot of cases with healthcare data. you can move that p-value however you want. You can make it, less accurate, more accurate. It's all up to you and the particular analysis you're trying to come up with. And then the R squared. R squared is just telling us, of this model, like of the data we have in the view currently, and this what's being modeled here, how much of the data is being explained by our model. You can see we have an R squared of about 0.25, which is about 25% of this model would be explained by, month and sales. So that tells me that there's about 75% of things that aren't accounted for within this model. So we really need to start thinking through that. And again, it goes back to your own analysis. If this is healthcare related data and we're doing clinical trials or something like that, and we're getting an R squared of that value, maybe there's more dimensions or something that we need to incorporate within our analysis to tackle that. Maybe we need to go back to the drawing board and come up with a new hypothesis. But it really just depends on your own analysis. But from a business perspective, if I got 25% R squared, that's actually a pretty decent R squared value, I would say. Obviously, business is so volatile. I mean, it could depend on your marketing. It could depend on, what products you have available in your inventory. There's so many different things that are unaccounted for within the data right here that we can kind of inherently think through and come up with assumptions. But this allows us to start making those assumptions and start asking those questions. So that's the power inherently of incorporating analysis like this. Now, before I move on from trendline, there's a couple other things I wanted to briefly touch on. We can see when I drag this into the view, we actually are presented with these 5 models here. And what I love about Tableau is even if you're not statistical savvy, they give you visual cues here on which model would probably fit your data the best. If our data and the marks on our view kind of have, start down here in the lower left and work their way up across the view, kind of a linear path, we'd probably start with a linear model. But if we have more seasonality where we have some curvature going on, maybe let's start with a polynomial model. And let's test that out real quick. So if we recall, before I move on, we have an R squared of 0.25. If we are considering a p-value of 0.05 here, this would be considered statistically significant model. So if I drag trend line over and drop it on the polynomial, you can see it's going to add some curvature. Again, I love Tableau just because it's so visual and appealing to me. Like if we just look at this model on the view, it's very simple to incorporate, but it makes so much sense. Even if we didn't have this model on the view, let me just remove it for a moment. Sorry, show trend lines. There it is. So even if I didn't have that model on the view, if we just look at our data, we can kind of see that we start pretty far down when our business started. And we had kind of this 2-year period where, we had some seasonality going on, but inherently sales were not growing year over year. And now we have kind of this almost exponential growth happening. Now, if I drag that model back into our view, we can see that directly here within the model itself. We kind of start down. We kind of have this period where, we're seeing sales kind of flat over a period of time, and then they start to kind of grow exponentially. So again, it's so cool how that can be interpreted both ways. And this just kind of adds that extra context for your users, even if they're not statistically savvy. Now we have a model and we kind of have this line that's showing us how our model or how our data is trending. It's just fascinating. So if you hover over this one, you can see a little bit more going on. Polynomial regression models are going to be a lot different than a linear. So we have some of these cubes going on within that sales equals. We look at our equation, a little bit more to it. And where we see those cubes and the square, that's what's adding that curvature, right? We go back to our old algebra days, I think we can all agree on that. So it makes sense. We can also look at our R squared and our p-value. We can see now my R squared is slightly more than it was with the linear model, which again, inherently makes sense. If we just, get out of that statistical mindset for a moment and just think clearly of the data itself, if I added a little bit of curvature to data that clearly has some seasonality to it, we're probably going to get more of that data is explained within our model. And we see that here. It's also still significantly or statistically significant with that p-value. So I would probably lean towards using this model to explain our data versus the linear model. I think it's adding more benefit and more context to our users. Couple more things on this. If you right click on your trend line and you go to describe trend model, for folks that are more statistically significant or statistical savvy, this is going to give us kind of that summary of statistics here. We're kind of used to seeing in other tools like maybe R or Python when we do some of these analyses. So you can see we have our coefficients and our p-values, degrees of freedom. We have some more summary statistics here, our standard error, summaries, our mean squared error, all those kinds of things. So if you really wanted to start getting into this and kind of pulling out those coefficients, maybe you can even build a calculated field, hint, hint, on some stuff that you can do with this. You can pull out those coefficients and use this model to build out a calculated field to maybe even come up with predictions on what's going to happen in the future. Moving on to our next section, which coming off what I just said is very relevant. But the next model within our analytics pane is called forecast. And this is forecasting data in the future. It's pretty clear, right? And what's happening here is, again, it's a very powerful statistic and a very powerful model that's being run here. Tableau actually has 8 different models that is being run when you drag this onto the view. And from those models, it chooses the best one out of those 8 and displays that visually. And it happens within an instant. That's what I love about it. If I were to do stuff like this in R or Python, it's a lot of coding involved to come up with these results. In Tableau, you can simply just drag it into the view. And it still gives you the ability to play with a lot of those parameters to go back in and see for yourself from the end user on which model you want to use, depending on your situation. So a couple things to call out. If I drag forecast into our view, we can see it displayed up here in the left. And what's going to happen is it's adding that to the color property of our marks card. And you can see what that creates is an actual and an estimate indicator based on color. And that's what the model is being calculated off of. So we can kind of see, however many periods we set to forecast into the future, that's what's being drawn there. And it's visually incorporated here within our view. It also adds kind of this 95% prediction interval around it. So again, just a really nice view of our data here. A couple things to call out, just like with the regression models and trend line, we can right click on the forecast and we can start playing with those parameters like I mentioned earlier. So if I right click on it, there'll be an option here added in our menu called forecast. This is where I can look at the summary statistics of what's being calculated. So again, those of us that are a little bit more statistically inclined, you can come in here and do whatever you want to do or pull out data points that you want to look at or analyze how this model is being calculated. You can do that all from right here. It's basically the same summary statistics that we'd get using other tools. Another thing is we can go into forecast options. And this is where we can start doing some fun stuff. So we can calculate out how many periods in the future we want to calculate. So by default, it's 12 months because I had month in the view. If you had a different set of granularity, it's probably going to be a different aggregation here. But I have 12 months it's calculating. We can change that by simply just clicking up or down on this parameter, and you can see it happening live within Tableau on how many months we want to go into the future. Where that's relevant for you guys as analysts or Tableau developers is sometimes when we drag this into the view, what we'll be presented with is an average line drawn across the view. And actually, let me see if I can just demo that quickly without breaking my entire flow here. Let's go year. Not even that goes. Quarter. And let's just keep this. Well, of course, I go off track and it's not going to do it for me. But I think I can explain through it. basically, if you don't have enough data within your view for it to calculate out these predictions accurately, what it'll do is it's going to just draw an average line across your data set. And we'll show you, hey, moving in the future, sometimes it's going to be on average 95% of the time, right? So it's just a great fallback, especially for us that are non-statistically significant or savvy. We might be intimidated by incorporating these features and being able to explain them to our stakeholders, right? But if we have kind of those fail safes that Tableau is built in, it makes us a little bit more comfortable and confident in incorporating this stuff within our view. We know that if it wasn't being derived appropriately, Tableau would just fail safe, go back to that drawing an average across. So that's just kind of a helpful hint or tip if you're starting to break into some of these, just to know and be aware of, so you're a little bit more confident in incorporating within your views. But let's jump back on track here. If I right click again and I go into that forecast options, again, where I was going with that is sometimes if it draws that average line, you can simply change the number of periods that it's calculating. And sometimes it will get back on track if it's not going so far out in the future and give you a prediction. Some other cool stuff you can do here, where I mentioned it's actually doing 8 different models and giving you the best one. You can actually go through and play with those. So right here from the forecast model, if you drop that drop down and click custom, you can now change these parameters and you can see the other models that it was calculating. So you can see here, if I go to additive, not even going to try to say that right now. If I change these options, you can see it live in the tool. It's going to it's recalculating out the forecast on a different algorithm, just by changing these parameter strings here. And these are all exponential smoothing algorithms, but they are different, depending on which of these parameters you have set. They are a different equation that's being calculated to come up with this forecast. So again, for those of us that are a little bit more statistically savvy, we can come in here and kind of set those. If you kind of have a standard within your organization or trying to compare it to maybe something you've built into the tool or another tool to what's being displayed in Tableau, you can kind of bounce back and forth and make sure you're doing apples to apple comparison as you're going through. The last thing I'll touch on with forecasting is it gives us within this forecast options a great foundational sentence here that describes on like what is happening and what is being done here within our model. So we can take this verbiage out of Tableau, which kind of explains it in layman terms, and we can use this language here as kind of a foundation to build upon to explain it to our stakeholders as well. So just wanted to call that out. That's a huge thing, I think, with statistical analysis. And I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of times we're presenting it to stakeholders, and it's just very hard to present that kind of analysis in a way that the business can take action on. So this kind of gives us a bridge between those languages there. All right, moving on to clustering. This is the last model that we can incorporate within the analytics pane in Tableau. And it's a great, easy, again, model that we can incorporate if we're trying to do very specific analyses on our data. For my example, I've stood up here. Let's say I wanted to come up with some customer segments so I could figure out how to market to specific groups of customers to make that marketing most effective. So I can simply, add customer name here, plot out every customer as a mark within my view, and then drag in this clustering model. And Tableau is using underneath the hood, k-means is the model that's being calculated here. So again, if you wanted to jump into another tool and come up with the same analysis, you should be getting very similar results, if not the exact same. But these are the 4 different clusters that it's analyzed. And now, let's say I wanted to take action on this data. I could export all this out. I have my customer segmentations assigned in the data. I could send that off to a marketing team. They could load that in their CRM. And now we have customer segmentations that were derived from Tableau that we can incorporate within our marketing team. Obviously, within your CRM, there's probably other tools that can do something like that. But as an example, this was the simplest one I could come up with. A few things to mention on clustering. Just like the others, you can describe the cluster. You can see all this fun stuff that's going on and all the statistical summaries here. You can also click Edit Cluster, and this gives you the opportunity to drag in more variables or change the number of clusters kind of on the fly. So you can, again, directly within Tableau, play with those parameters and come up with different models or different results, I should say. Now, I saved the best for last. I mentioned custom is my favorite. And the reason for that is it gives us the ability as developers to bring in custom stuff that's not native within Tableau. And that's really where you can start making some huge innovations and doing really fun stuff, is when you're doing stuff that Tableau doesn't do normally. To show you some of that, I'll just briefly touch on these different options. Let me clear this stuff out so we can get a better view. So here's my trend line my line chart here that I've been using the entire presentation. And when we drag in custom, any one of these custom options, I'll just drag it into the view. We can see we're given a lot more flexibility with how we want this calculated and at which level of granularity. We have the table, now we have pane, cell. We can do it on the X and Y axes on any one of those different scopes. And for now, I'll just drop this into, the sum of sales to make it easy. And you can see we're presented with this really nice menu here where we can start making changes and customizing what is being displayed visually within the view. So just to kind of touch on this, you can see it kind of gives us the ability to toggle between, each of the four options that are in our custom section there. And as we kind of toggle through these, we can see it being implemented in the background. So let me just move this menu over here. So I can toggle to banding, and what it's doing is drawing a band. We can see distributions, and we can go to box plot, and draw a box plot across our view. Now, we can also change the scope. So if we think back when I was dragging this into the view where it said table, pane, or cell, that's what Tableau defines as the scope of how we're calculating out these reference lines and bandings. So you can see here, I can set the different scopes. I can change those on the fly. I can change what value is being displayed. Another great one, and again, I'm kind of knocking on wood, hint, hint. You can drag in parameters, which is, from Tableau's perspective, the only way that you can get input from the user is typically through a parameter. They're literally adding data to the data set, if you think about it like that. So this is a great option here that you can start incorporating within these analyses. Now you might be asking yourself, like, okay, Ethan, this is great. How do I use this? Let me show you a few practical examples. Again, looking at the box plot. I mentioned earlier, the box plot is a fantastic analysis for a developer. But if I were to present this visually to a stakeholder, personally, I would never get caught dead trying to present this to one of my stakeholders. It's just so visually unappealing. It almost causes more confusion than it's doing any good presented in this format. So what we can do is we can use these bandings and these reference lines to build our custom box plot presented in a better visual way. And to demonstrate that, let me pull up another tool. This is something that I stood up. It's out there on Tableau Public. But if we look at median with quartiles here, lost connection to Tableau, reconnect. Cool. If we look at this analysis, this is essentially a box plot that I've built in a more visually appealing way for our end users, utilizing those custom sections or that custom section within our analytics pane. It's literally the exact same information. We have our median, kind of this inner quartile range, and then our upper and lower whiskers I've created with banding. So that's one practical example of how you can use that custom section to present your data in a little bit more visual format and more appealing, so the end users can make sense out of it. Some other examples. These are two different models that are not natively built within Tableau, but I can use that custom section to incorporate them here. This is looking at calculating outliers, and it's looking at standard deviations here. We can see I've kind of put some visual cues in here where I have, anything that falls within this section is about 68% of our data. Anything that falls within our wider range here, that makes about 95% of our data. But anything that falls outside of that, you could consider an outlier. And again, taking off our statistical hat, putting on our, normal thinking data viz hat, we think of this inherently, like it makes sense. I have about 100 marks on this view. We're looking at about 95% of the data falls within that. So we have about almost 5 marks exactly that fall outside of our scope here. So again, it's just a very quick check that you can do mentally to make sense out of this, and a great visual way that you can take this information to your stakeholders and you can start analyzing these data points further. I've highlighted these with conditional formatting as what I would call good anomalies, looking at profit data here. So anything above that, I would say, hey, we're making crazy good profit here. Let's figure out why. Anything below it, hey, we have a bad anomaly here. We made very negative profit in this example. How can we look at that, analyze it, and take action on it? And visually, this just helps us do that and present that kind of modeling in a visual way that our stakeholders can understand. Another quick example is using a Z-score test. And here we can see I've utilized banding within the view and incorporated a custom model that draws out these lines. And now, again, I can use that conditional formatting on that model. So let me demonstrate that live in the tool here. If I go to the sheet, you can see what I've done to calculate out that Z-score is I've literally created calculated fields that this is the model. I know what the algorithm is, so I can create a calculated field on it using the same measures and dimensions and functions built within Tableau. Now I can utilize that custom section within our analytics pane to incorporate a model not native within Tableau, directly within Tableau, and visualize it so we can take it to the stakeholders and make sense out of it. So that's really the power of the analytics pane and that custom section. So in closing, again, what I wanted to reiterate with this particular talk is, we have that kind of disparity between presenting data visually and taking action, and data science, statistical stuff that's going on that's very advanced and hard to understand. And really, we need to find ways that, as Tableau developers, we need to work with either our data science team, or if you have a statistics background, this is something that you need to be thinking through as you present your statistical models to your stakeholders. How can we explain this? How can we make it more visual? How can we put it into the hands of an analyst and productionize this model in a way that they can look at it, make sense of it, and take action on our models that we're presenting to them? Again, that's what this talk was about, a brief introduction of that. The book will go into that stuff more in detail. So definitely stay tuned on where that's at, the progress as I'm kind of writing it. I'll be posting on social as I kind of progress through it. So definitely follow me on any of my social networks here. You can follow me at Twitter at the Data Veteran, or LinkedIn is just, my first and last name with a hyphen. If you have any questions too, feel free to reach out to me direct. I'm happy to jump in and help anyone in the data fam or the data community talk through this stuff. I find it fascinating, so I do this stuff on my free time. I'm kind of a nerd. So if you guys do have questions, feel free to reach out anytime. I'm happy to jump in and help. But is there any questions on the talk today? Hop back over to chat.
Ethan, I had a kind of related question. When does that book officially come out and available for everyone?
The publication date that I'm shooting for is December 23rd. So it'll be a great Christmas gift to have it done. Now, when it goes to print, I'm not exactly sure, but that's the publication date. So you could pick it up like ebook wise. But as that date approaches, I'll have more information. I can speak to that a bit more.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Are there any other questions in the chat? I really like that that the when you show the ones that show different colors for the anomalies, for like, okay, these are the outliers. I mean, I seriously like how you put that together, because sometimes maybe not sales, but maybe you're looking at some ranking, or you're looking at something where you want to see, let's say that you have, I was thinking about some of these makeover Monday challenges, and I was just thinking, wow, I could use one of these to show, for example, there were the other day, there were like 160 countries, something like that, in the Makeover Monday. And I was just thinking, who is really an outlier here, right? Uh, for unemployment, for there were rankings for, or scores. I'm sorry, they were actually not ranking; they were actually scores. So which countries, are out of the range of most of those countries? It would be cool to see who is, an anomaly or an outlier, and this the way that you presented that, it will work great.
Yeah, that'd be a great use of that. Conditional formatting. I mean, really to calculate out and to build out where those are changing color. It's all based on window sums and window averages, and in a calculated field. We drop that onto the colors property in the marks card. That's how we get kind of that change of color based on a condition. But yeah, I agree. That'd be a fantastic like how to incorporate that for sure.
Yeah. Aaron, there's any other questions? Anybody out there? No? Okay. I think that's I mean, this is wonderful. I mean, I really feel like, this is like I was telling Aaron earlier today, this is a very different topic, right? Something that not a lot of people are using. Many of these things, I personally don't use them myself, but I should. And that's what I love about this topic, because I need to start using most of this features that are been there for a long time. I mean, this is many of these features I remember seeing in Tableau probably years and years ago, but it's just something that, I don't know, we don't use it maybe because we're worried or scared that some people will not understand it. But I think that you prove that it's some way, a matter of explaining them, and showing them in a better way. So this is fascinating information, and glad that you're gonna have a book soon. Um, I think there is a question in there, Aaron. Is that correct? From Jody, I think it is. Let's see. There's one question. So it says, how difficult it is to do statistical analysis in Tableau without pulling all the data in the view, or to apply filters on data without impacting the underlying average, median, C-scores, maybe using LODs. That's what somebody just asked.
Yeah, if that's so there's two things there. One, you could make the models dynamic. As you're filtering stuff out, the model is literally updating and changing live as you're doing that, which has value. I definitely see what you're saying, though. Like if you're calculating out some of these underlying statistics, you may want those to be static values. So the model is always calculating out on the same thing. LODs would be a great way to do that. Another great way to do that is to bring it in within your data pipeline. So you can, I mentioned earlier, you can calculate some of these coefficients and then take the algorithm, plug those coefficients into a calculated field. Now you can incorporate that however you want. So that's also an option. Either bring it into the data somehow, incorporate it within a calculated field. LODs would be great for that. As you get more advanced into some of this stuff too, you can look at the external connections where you're doing stuff and writing R or Python within Tableau, which will handle some of that and being calculated out elsewhere, and then bringing it in to the view. So yeah, there's all kinds of different ways you can tackle that.
So they're asking, the same person asking, do you have an example you can share for that, or maybe a link in the future, something? Yeah, maybe we can share. Oh yeah, so right there, Ethan just added the one that he was showing. Oh, that's great, because I wanted to see that too.
Yeah. That's out there on Tableau Public. You guys can download that and re-engineer it however you want, but it has some of that underlying stuff that you're talking about built in within that workbook. So feel free to take it, re-engineer it, and do whatever you want with it.
Awesome. So we just came up to 1 p.m. Eastern, just almost done today. But just wanted to say thank you, Ethan. Thank you for being with us today. Amazing, like I said, really, really good information because and this presentation is super valuable for anybody because, like I said, nobody's talking about this. Nobody's really a lot of these things. To be honest, myself, I don't use it, but I should. And thank you again for being with us one more time. I mean, he's been with us before. Always great content, great stuff. And follow him, like he said, and go to his talk. So always have great content there too. To the Better Around Stock. So thank you so much. Thank you for everybody that attended today. We are recording the session. It will be available. I'm going to watch it myself for some of the things that Aiton was presenting today. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you next month. We're going to have a great presentation, always at lunchtime, lunch and learn. And thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you all. Thanks, Emil, for the invite. Always happy to come and talk.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Stop the recording.